Okay, good evening. We are on Daf Lamed Ches, Amud Beis, towards the bottom, Uman Tana de Polygo de Rabbi, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines from the bottom. Before we do that, we ended off with a very practical piece of Gemara about what happens when your tzitzis strings rip, right? Mm-hmm. So this is the Mishnah Brura, or the quoting from the Mechaber from the Shulchan Aruch here. Yud Beis, Siman Yud Beis. He says, Im nifseku kol chutei haknaf. If the strings from the corner tear off, then ishtar behem kidei anivas kol hachutim. If there's enough to tie all of the strings, like we had said, hapsukim biyachad, to tie them together, then it's kosher. V'im lo nishar kidei aniva, if it doesn't have enough to be able to tie, afilu b'chut echad shenifsa kulo pasul, even if one of them tears all the way through, then it's pasul. And he goes on and mentions that there are multiple ways to understand what that is talking about. So he says, "Afilu b'chut echad shenifsa kulo pasul." Even if one of them rips all the way, then it's pasul. Hilkach. Therefore, kevan shekol echad kaful l'shnayim. Every one of the strings that are on your tzitzis are really 4 strings that are doubled over. That's what's here, right? So therefore, im nifseku shnei roshim pasul. Since one makes it pasul, even if one of these breaks off, the other side of the same string is still there. Therefore, one by itself doesn't make your tzitzis pasul.
That's how the other string, from at the bottom where you start tying the knots.
We're not talking about cutting it at the bottom yet. We're talking about at the top, right here, over here. But if one of them breaks off, since the other side of that string is still fine, whichever one it is, you don't know which one it is because they're all mixed up, but one of them is going to be fine, right? Now, if 2 of them, now it becomes pasul. Why? Shema nifsa chut echad, because it might be the same string, right, on both ends. Ulefima she'anu noagim. Now we have the custom that when we tie tzitzis, and when you tied them here, if you did this, you were careful. But you have 2. We have the 4, right? When we go across and we wind each time, you keep the sets of 4 separated from each other. You don't mix them all together like this and tie them up. When you get to the end, right? When you tie them up, you hold them like this, right? So that you can still keep them separated, so that each time you're tying the same 4, which means that I know that if one breaks on this side and a second one breaks on the same side, it's not the same string, right? Only if one breaks on this side and one breaks on this side, then we have a problem, right? So now, he says now that we are noeg, which shows that it's not required. If your tzitzis, you don't do that. Let's say siman bedalas roshim, that we are going to mark off the 4 different ends, right? So that 4 of them are on one side, shel hakesher, and the 4 other sides of the strings are on the other side of the knot. If 2 strings break on the same side, it's kosher. Still kosher. Why? It's 2 different strings. And that's not going to be a problem. And we know the other side is still there, therefore we're okay. Yoser michte aniva, as long as which is enough for it to tie. Now, Rabbeinu Tam says interesting, which we didn't read inside the Tosfos. So he quotes the Rabbeinu Tam. Lo machshirim ela benishtaru beis chutin shleimim. He says not kosher unless 2 strings are completely full, 100% good. Dahainu, arba roshim shekol echad meharoshim aruch yud beis godlim. He says that means that 4 ends, right, have to be, at each one of those ends, have to be 12 thumbs in length. So we're going to see that that's going to be the length, ideal length of what your tzitzis ought to be, right? 12 thumbs, right? Then, as long as 2 of them are full length, then it's still kosher even if 2 of them broke. As long as those 2 have enough left that you can tie a knot.
We need 2 more people to get 12 thumbs.
No, you don't.
2, 4, 6, 8.
Oh, you mean here in the room, right? I was going to say, every person only has 2 thumbs. If you get to 12, you need a lot more people. But okay, yes, if you count that, that's right, yes. Aval. Im nifseku gimel chutin, if 3 strings break on the same side, afa pish nishtayr bahem k'tei aniva, even though you're going to have enough to be able to tie what's left, psulim, then it will be pasul. Nekach, keshen neschaschu shlosha roshim, Therefore, we hold that if even three on the same side, if they break, if you weren't careful, that they weren't on the opposite, we're scared that it's going to be the same strings from the same side. You're only going to have one that's complete because three are going to be incomplete, right? Hilkach misveka, puzzle, therefore, from the suffix of the Reder Tam, you'd be puzzle. So, bottom line of it is, right? One of your strings rips, you can still go with it, right? Get two that rip, now you're in trouble, right? That's what we're going to try to avoid. Okay? So, mention that since we mentioned at the end of the day yesterday, I might go back to the Mishnah Berurah and a couple of things later on, since we got interesting, exciting stuff. And today's daf is Lamed Tes, if I'm not mistaken, correct? So we're right on top, we're right on shape. So. Okay, good. Man Tana de Poligale de Rebbe. So who's the Tana who disagrees with Rebbe and holds that Rebbe says that you need to have blue and white together in your tzitzis to be acceptable? Who's the one who argues with that opinion and holds you don't need blue and white? Hi Tana. Who? This brisa, the Tanya winner brisa. Rabbi Yitzchak Omer, Rabbi Yitzchak says, Mishum Rabbi Nasan, Rabbi Nasan, Sha'amar Mishum Rabbi Yossi Aglili, who says the name of Rabbi Yossi Aglili, Sha'amar Mishum Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, who says the name of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, Ve'ein lo tchelas, if the tzitzis does not have tchelas on it, matil lavon, then just put white strings on. Now, what does that mean? So interestingly, right, the matil lavon, that it sounds like you will replace the missing blue strings with white strings and you go. It's not 100%. I want to say that it was Tosfos who says, that Rabbeinu Tam says, that what you do is that you just leave the blue ones out and you go with deficient, just four white, tzitzis that only has just the four white strings. You don't put the other ones on at all. Right, so Rashi seems to imply all white, which is what we do, right? So we have all the white strings. Okay, Amar Rava. Rava says Shma Mina. So from this halacha we can learn tzarich likshur al kol chulia vechulia. That all of the tzitzis, every time that you're going to make a bundle, right? These are the bundles that we're making, which they would do at least.
Which we did a couple months ago.
That's right. So between each one, we're going to do a double knot between each and every one. Why? How do you see that? Because because if you didn't need these knots, so then Had Amri b'nei Rabbi Chia, that which the children of Chia had said above, that gardume techelas ksherin, that if you have shortened strings of the techelas are going to be kosher. The gardume ezov, also we said the same thing about the shortened branch of the hyssop would also be okay, or ksherin. Kaven de ishtarile eloi ishtarile kule. So if they broke all the way down, so then because they would have broken down here, I guess, the knot will come undone, and then the whole thing will fall apart because it's all just one. There's no knots in between each section. The worst case scenario is that it comes here, the top knot's going to come undone, and then one set comes undone, but all the other ones are going to survive. For example, this one, right? This tzitzis has 7, 8, 11, and it's missing the last set. So we'll fix these, right? Okay, so that's why Hashem made me pick this one, right? So you can be able to see.
We should tell people if anyone asking for spare thoughts, don't keep away from that one.
Right, but we'll fix it. We'll fix it. Okay.
So someone's gonna bring it home and fix it.
Okay, now. Okay, good. Let's turn the page. Go to Lamed Testament.
Already have to Lamed Testament.
Right. So Dilma. So the answer says no. That's not necessarily true. Dilma de iktar. We don't necessarily know that you didn't tie extra knots. In other words, this doesn't prove you must put extra knots. It means you can put extra knots, and that is the way we hold. Meaning that in such a circumstance where you have a talus like this and it's missing the extra, this is kosher. It's fine. It's kosher, right? You don't need all of them. We have the minhag to put all of them in, but as long as you have one knot, right, that would be okay. Okay, so that is, as we're going to see. Vama Rabba says, Shma Mina, we learn from here that Kesher Elyon, the upper knot of the tzitzis, is Del Raisa. The upper knot is Del Raisa. Which one is the upper knot? Fair question, right? Whether the upper knot is this one or the upper knot is this bottom one is deoraisa, right? Lamaisa, when we make tzitzis, right? You say l'shem mitzvah tzitzis when you tie your first knot, and when you tie the end, right at the end, you could say it also because whichever one is the deoraisa one, right? That way.
When you tie the last string or
To the last knot at the end, right? L'shem mitzvah tzitzis, right? De'i salka daitach derabanan, because if it was only derabanan, my itzrich lemishrei sadin betzitzis. So then, why would the Torah? What is the reason why we would have to have a permission to worry about shatnez during our tzitzis problem? In other words, it wouldn't even be tied on if we just hung if there's no knots, right? You just hung the strings on it. Then where's the shatnez part? You just put, as we were saying, if I put some linen on top of my wool, I put some wool on top of my linen. It's not shatnez. It's only if it's tied together, if it's part of the garment. So therefore, the fact that we have a drush, right? It says that you're supposed to put on tzitzis, and then right next to the tzitzis, it also talks about shatnez. Since the two things are listed together, it means that you can even tie shatnez on your tzitzis. I wouldn't need such a thing if I didn't have to tie. So pshita, so that is clear that would be because hatokef tekifa achas, if somebody is going to sew the two materials together, so right, all you do is you loop something through a hole one time, eino chibur, that is not considered for it to be connected as far as shatnez is concerned, right? Elo shmamina deoraisa. So you clearly see from here that you've got to tie it, you've got to really double knot it and tie it in order for tzitzis to be effective, because otherwise, the rule is, we're going to see later on, that ase dochalos, a positive commandment pushes off a negative commandment, only applies where there's no possible way to avoid violating the negative commandment. If I can do the positive commandment in such a way that I don't violate the negative commandment, that's ideal, right? I don't have permission to do whatever I want just because, right? I've got a shofar. I want to blow a shofar. Great, I'm allowed to steal yours. No, you're not. There's a perfectly fine way for you to blow a shofar without stealing.
You can ask permission. You've got
right. So perfectly. Right. So therefore, when it comes to tzitzis, if there was a permissible way for me to put tzitzis on that wasn't shatnez, then that would be the way to go. Right? The fact that the Torah has to give me permission means that I must be tying it in order for it to be kosher for tzitzis. Okay. Amar Rabbi bar Rav Ada. Rabbi bar Rav Ada says, Amar Rav Ada, Amar Rav, who said in the name of Rav Ada, he's quoting his father in the name of Rav. Im nifsa kachut me'ikaro psula. Now this is Yehuda's point. If the string breaks up here at the source, right, by the corner, that's possible. Right? Down here, we said we had all those rules that you can cut it short and whatever. Right? At the top, that's possible. That you can't. If one of these breaks, then that's it. You're done. Right? That's the end of it. Yosef Rav Nachman v'kamer lahoshmaita. So Rav Nachman was sitting and he was telling over this saying, and Esvei, Rav Nachman. So Rava asked Rav Nachman the following question: Bamedvar mamurim. When do we say that the tzitzis require some kind of a measurement? Betchila so. That's when you make the tzitzis. Aval sofo. But once your tzitzis are made, if they become shorter over time, shiyarav v'gardumav kolshehu. So the remainder can be any amount. So my shiyarav my gardumav. It sounds like there's two different things. The remnants and the stubs can be any amount. So what's the remnants? What's the stubs? So my love shiyorev da'afsik minayu v'yishtayer minayu gardumav di'igardum igardume. Doesn't it mean that shiyorev means that some of the strings, one of the strings broke, but some of them are still remaining, and the gardumim is where it ripped off. Or no, the gardum, he says gardum is down here, right? He says gardumim is where it breaks by the corner, and the ishtari and the shiyarim means that the string was broken, but a little bit is left. So that means that he's interpreting this brisa to say, doesn't matter if it breaks up here or breaks down here, it's still kosher, right? That's how you have to explain this brisa.
Even with the remnant, it's still kosher.
So the answer is low. That's not what the brisa means. Chadekatani, it's the same thing. Shiure gardumov, the leftovers of the string that breaks up here. That's kosher, can be acceptable if it's even in the smallest amounts. What is he saying? He's saying that when you tie your tzitzis, you need to have a shear, which we're going to see how much that amount is. We already learned it in the Shulchan Aruch that it's 12 thumbs, right? Because we're about to say that now. Right. But the 12 thumbs, when I make my tzitzis, I should have 12 thumbs distance. But if over time it gets shorter and shorter and shorter, they're still okay. Right? Now we have some that sounds weird, right? Once you have a shear, shouldn't the shear be the same? We have other types of mitzvahs that are the same way. We talked about in Sanhedrin, for example, you can start doing dinei mamonis during the day and finish it off at night, right? As long as you start in one way, and it's fine. At the beginning of the mitzvah, you can continue on with the mitzvah all the way through. Some mitzvahs that are like that. Tzitzis is like that. Once you set the mitzvah up, then it becomes tzitzis, then even if it gets shorter, it's okay.
So the mitzvah say.
It is a mitzvah saseh. Okay, now, Velema gardumav shiyorav lomali. So if that's the case, then why does the Brisa use the double language? Right? It's gardumim and the shiurim if it means the same thing. So kamash malan, this is what it's teaching me. Debayinon shiyura legardumav kedei anvan. That means that I need some kind of a measurement, even though we said that you can rip down to the end of this, right? There's still a measurement. What was the measurement? The amount that it takes to be able to tie slip knots, right? A slip knot, the definition is, right? I'd be able to make a loop and then be able to slip that in between. So, that if you're figuring out how much it takes to be able to create a slip knot, I wasn't so great at it right here, but let's say that much, maybe, right? Yeah. Still, it's a significant couple inches, not like down here, right?
Your father-in-law would be the best person to ask that.
Right.
Yes, true.
Okay.
And that's the space to the bottom knot. You need that.
That's up here, right? That's at this knee. These can break off, but again, like we said, I think it seemed to be that it's only if you have two that are problematic. Okay.
But
on the bottom,
just to clarify my question,
yes,
because we said that this one, for example, is missing a section over here.
Yes.
Right. So are we talking about?
Oh, so you're saying why don't you just untie a little bit more, right? The answer is yeah. You might be able to get away with it. You're right. Now, it seems. That's a good question. If I have it tied up, I'm not sure the answer, right? If I have it tied up and just a little drop is here, right? Then that might be no good. But if I untie it and then allow it a little bit more, that might be better, as we're going to see from the Gemara, right? It might be better to untie it and have fewer knots and have a little bit of the string coming out than have no string. Okay?
What is the certain number you have found, right?
It's a minhag, right? The minhag is, but these seem to be the laws d'oraisa. Right, from a Torah perspective, if I've got a four-corner garment and now I've got no tzitzis on it, better that I should have followed the d'oraisa and not have the right number of the windings, which is just a custom.
Like a spring jacket is a four-corner garment, no?
I don't know. It depends on which one. Depends on which one, right? If you don't do the zipper, you've got two corners, right? Because if it's the same all the way around. Your suit jackets wind up being where your problem is, right? Most suit jackets now have right. They have cut in the back, right? And we learned that if you've got a five-corner garment, because this suit jacket is rounded corners, right? So it's not an issue. But in the 80s, right? The style used to be very.
Oh yeah.
Right? They used to have. They have really corners.
Right.
There were problems, right? You could have serious problems. Now we're going to see in the Shulchan Aruch talks about the beged, in order for it to be a corner, has to be cut a certain height, a certain distance into the garment. Right. So if you're looking at my suit jacket, right? So up to here isn't halfway. It's not all the way up. So therefore, this wouldn't necessarily be in any event. But certainly with the rounded corners, you're safe, right? But you have to be aware of these things. You have to pay attention to it.
Not sure. It has four corners.
Right. That's why if you look at many of the bekishes that people go by, right? You have to be able. They make sure that the back of the bekisha has one of them has a rounded corner. You start looking at people, but the bekishes that people, because the vents in the back, right? Yeah. They go since their bekishes go all the way down to like their knees, whatever. By the time it comes up to here, where the vent is, it's already half the garment, right? It could be an issue, right? So they round the corners when they make them in order to be able to avoid that problem, right? So. Pay attention.
So in Eretz Yisrael, there's a store now where they're making like high fashion garments that all just have tzitzis on them.
Really?
Is
that right?
Yeah.
So there you go. Okay, so now, Yosef Rabba v'kamer mishmei derav. Rabba was sitting and he said in the name of Rav, Chut shel kerech. Ola min haminyan. The string that you wind with, right? So that one counts. In other words, you don't have to say I need 4 strings and then I need a 5th one to wind around it, right? That one counts. It's hard to be able to tell from this one which is the string that we're going to wind with, although I can track it from here, so it's probably right. You can track it back to there. It's not so bad, right? But this string counts into it. Okay. Amar le Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says Shmuel Amra v'lo Rav. You're right, except that Shmuel said it, not Rav. Right, just a fair point. Just to be able to make sure, bring Mashiach, right? Bring the Geula when you quote something in the right person's name. Right. So Itmar Nami. So it's also said the halacha is Amar Rabbi Bar Chana. Rabbi Chana says Sachli Rabbi Yoshai Demin Usha. Rabbi Yoshia from Usha told me Chutchel Kerech Ola Lamin Aminyan, that the string that you're wrapping around counts as one of the 4 strings. Okay, Yosef Rava, the Ka'amar Mishmei de Shmuel. Rava was saying, and he said this in the name of Shmuel. Tchelas shekarach ruba, okay. If you've got the tzitzis, that most of it, 2/3 of it is wrapped, is kshera. That's kosher. Even though the ideal perfect tzitzis is that 2/3 of it should be string, 1/3 of it is the knots, right? If you have it the other way around, let's say you have shorter strings and you get, your strings come out to here at the end, right? It's kosher. That's still kosher, right?
Whether it's where they have one string longest.
That one is because that's going to be the string that you're winding with, right? The winding string is going to be longer, right? It'll stick.
The longest one.
Correct, and we leave it long. Okay, and that we said Itmar Nami. We also so Amar le Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says Rav Amar Rav Shmuel. You're right again, but that's the one that Rav said, not Shmuel. Itmar Nami. We also say that Amar Rav Huna Bar Yehuda. That Rav Huna Bar Yehuda said Amar Rav Sheshes and Rav Sheshes. Amar Rav Yirmiyah Bar Abba Amar Rav. Tchelu shekarach ruba kshira. That the tchelas, that if the tzitzis is most of it is wound up, it's still kosher. Reb Chia breder Rav Nasan Masni Hachi. Reb Chia, the son of Rav Nasan, taught it as follows: Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav Sheshes, Amar Rav Yirmiyah Bar Abba, Amar Rav. Tchelas shekarach ruba. If you've got tzitzis, and this we're saying tchelas, but we're using that as sort of the shorthand for tzitzis in this case. That is most of the way, wound up most of the way. Ksheretz kosher v'afilu lo karach ba ela chulia achas. Even if all you had is one bundle of 3 windings, that's enough to be able to make it kosher. V'noye techelas shlish gedil ushnei shlishei anaf. The nicest way, as we just said, the nicest way to make tzitzis is where one part is wound up and 2/3 of it is strings. So that's the ideal. If you get yourself nice tzitzis, that's what it should look like. Tana, we learned hapoches. The kamashir chulia. What is the length of the strings? Rabbi Yomer kadesh yichroch v'yashanah v'shalish. He says the amount so that you can wind it, do it again, and a 3rd time. That's the amount.
Three times around. Basically.
Right. Correct. Yes. The chulia is the windings. Right. The chulia is the windings.
Yep.
That's right. So therefore, that's the minimum. They must, we've developed other, numbers over time, but the basic amount is 3, 3, 3, and that way they would do it that way. Tana, we learned hapoches lo yivchos misheva. We learned that no, if you're going to wind, you shouldn't do less than 7. Okay. Vehamosif, and if you're going to do more windings, lo yosef al shlosh, don't do more than 13. Now we see the numbers starting to come into shape. Right. 7, 9, 11, 13. 7, 8, 11, 13. And that's another, the different minhagim. And then we also have the custom that says,
we do 7, 8, 11, 13.
Some do Yud K Vav K, right? 10, 5, 6, 5, right? The only issue is that it says in the Gemara you shouldn't do not less than 7, but I guess if the minhag was 5, but okay. Why 7? Keneged Shiva Rikim. Remember, everything in tzitzis is supposed to be uri'isem osam. You'll see them, and you'll remember it's a big mnemonic device. You look at the tzitzis and you remember Shemayim. So I'm going to see 7 times wound, and I'm going to remember 7 levels of Shemayim. Hashem is up there after 7 levels of Shemayim. V'hamosif, and then the one who adds, lo yosef al shlosh, shouldn't make more than 13. Why? Keneged Shiva Rikian, because of the 7 levels of Shemayim, the Shisha Avirin Shebeinehem, and the 6 spaces that exist between each of the heavens. So 7 plus 6 equals 13. And that's Hashem is above all of that. So somewhere between 7 and 13. Tana, we learned, kishehu maschil, when you start to tie, maschil belovon, right? So you're supposed to start with the white string first. Okay?
When you tie with tchilas, you use the tchilas for the tie?
That's, well, we're going to see it's a machlokas here, right? What it says the first thing that you should do according to this brisa, you start with the white one, because it says ha-kanaf, you're supposed to do the kanaf, the same color as the corner. Min kanaf, you use the one that is of the type of the corner, right? And then, ukeshu mesayim, when you finish, then you switch to the blue. Umesayim beloved, and then at the end you switch back to the white. Right? So
this, I've never seen how Techeles is tied, and is it done differently than you would do with just.
So the answer is it all depends. Right? I should have Googled and brought some pictures of all the different types. There are various minhagim of how the tchelos gets tied in.
Sunday, we get Sunday.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I'll bring a Sunday and get a nice picture of it. But it's all the ways that it gets tied are all.
Different.
Yes, and the Rambam.
Yeah.
Right. The Sephardim tie white differently. Right. They tie they loop each one in. Right, as you go around, and then you loop under again. You go around and loop, and it creates a spiral, right? And then, but the Rambam says that you basically tie your tzitzis with tchelos the same way you tie your tzitzis normally, except you use the tchelos string as the winder, right? Okay, fine. Rav v'Rabbi Barachana hava yosvi v'kacholif v'azul hahu gavra. So Rabbi and Rabbi Bar Chana were sitting, and this fellow came by and he passed by them. Demikase glima dekula techelta. He was wearing a garment that was completely tchelos, which is something because it's a very expensive dye, right? So his garment was completely tchelos. Ramile techelta, and he had tzitzis, and the tzitzis were blue, right? The tzitzis were blue. Ugedila migdal. And his tzitzis that were all blue were also completely braided, completely tied up. There was no strings dangling at all. This might be a proof to the idea that, I don't know. The answer to your question has got me a little bit stumped. I'm not sure what happens there. Okay. Amar Rav yoi glima velo yoi tchelta. He says, that garment is beautiful, but the tzitzis on that garment are not so good because he didn't leave any strings, right? As we just suggested that you should have some string left over. Rabbi Bar Chana Amar yoir glime v'yoi tchelta. Rabbi Bar Chana says, no, it's great, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The tzitzis are great. Right, you don't have to leave any strings outstanding. Right, that should be fine. But my kamifli, what do they argue about? Rabbi Bar Chana Safa, Rabbi Bar Chana holds ksiv gedil. The pasuk says in Dvarim gedilim taselachu. You're supposed to make fringes. So therefore, you need fringes. Ksiv, and it also says psil, right, which means that you need strings that are not wound up. So gidil is wound up strings, and then ptilim are unwound strings. So the fact that you have two psukim describing tzitzis as wound and unwound, so how are you supposed to do both? So that answer is o gidil, o psil. You can have it either way. You can either wind them all the way up, or you can leave them dangling. The Rav Sava, Rav disagrees. He says, Leolim psil ba'inon. No, it always have to, of course you have to leave them with some of the fringes loose. V'ahi gedilim leminyanahu da'asa. And that which it says by gedilim is only coming to tell you the number of strings that you need in the tzitzis. Gedil is shnayim, that in order to twist something up, you need at least two, right? You can't twist one thing, right? So you need at least two. And then gedilim is a plural. So of 2 times 2, which is arba. So that's how you know you need 4 strings. So aseh gedil, so what you do is you take 4 strings, upos lehu mitocho, and then you tie them up, and then you leave the fringes hanging loose, not all bound up. So he says that's what's required. So I guess if we hold like Rav, then it's a matter of better to untie it, I guess, so you have some of it loose. Okay, Amar Shmuel, Mishmei de Levi. Shmuel said the name of Levi. Chute tzemer potrin bishel pishnon. Back to the shatnez issue, a little bit more in detail. We said that if you've got tzitzis, the white strings are made out of wool So then if your garment is made out of linen, you're okay, right? Even though wool and linen can't be together, right? That's okay. Iboilu. So he asked him the following question: Shall pishton mao shifteru b'shel tzemer? Can you put linen strings on your? So tzemer b'shel pishtim hu depotar. So I understand. How do I know that you can put wool on linen? Because tekemen tchelas pitra lavan nami pater. Because the Torah says you have to put tchelas. Now tchelas is blue, but it's not just blue. It means wool that's dyed blue. Tchelas is wool. So therefore,
from that fish.
So you can't. We know that we can't. You're not making tchelas out of linen. So when the Torah says that you should put tchelas on your corners, you know we're talking about wool. So that means that even if my garment is made out of linen, I'm allowed to put wool on it. Once I know I'm allowed to put blue wool, then it stands to reason I could put white wool on it. Also, there's no reason to say this kind of blue wool is okay, but the white wool isn't. No, clearly this Torah is telling me that wool is okay on linen. So fine. Aval, but when it comes to pishtim bitzemer, if the garment is wool, then who says I can put linen strings on? Because, right, there would be no, I can't, maybe I can't put it on. Because there's no reason, once tchelas is still wool, who says I can start putting white linen on it? Right? There's no reason to. Oh, Dilmor, perhaps, since it says in Dvarim, you shouldn't wear shatnez, and then you should make tzitzis, all in the same pasuk, or the next pasuk. So, loshna tzemer v'fishim, loshna b'fishim b'tzemer. It doesn't make a difference. You could put linen onto wool, you could put wool onto linen. It's not, the Torah is telling me it's permitted. So, what's the answer? Tashma, come and listen. To Amar Rachba, Amar Rav Yehuda. Rachba said in Rav Yehuda, Chute tzemer, when it comes to wool strings, the white strings that are made of wool, potrin b'shel pishton, they can be put on a linen garment. Shel pishton, potrin shel tzemer. And you can put linen ones on your wool garment. Chute tzemer v'pishtim. Now, if you've got a mixture, you have some linen threads, and then you've got some wool threads. Potrin b'chol makom. Or either one. If you've got one or the other, so then those are going to be able to help any type of garment you have. Whatever material your garment is made out of, wool and linen strings are fine.
And polyester?
Not polyester, right? Because polyester is polyester even woven, right? Nylon is not woven. So we're going to say, Va'afilu b'shiroin, even if you're talking about silk, right? Even if you're talking about silk, then you can put wool or linen onto silk, right? Now you ask the question, right? Polyester maybe, but when it comes to fabrics like nylon and those, so we're going to see that leather doesn't require tzitzis. Anything that's not a woven garment doesn't require, a woven material does not require. So if you have, most like we have a lot of materials, you can have lycra or whatever kind of things you mix in. You could have those, you could have tzitzis on because it's a woven fabric. But if I had a material like a poncho that's made out of plastic or something like that, maybe not, right? Because it's not a woven fabric, right? Okay. So, upliga de Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman disagrees. He says, Damar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, Hashiroin p'turim min tzitzis. Silk is exempt from tzitzis. You don't need to put it on.
Why is that?
Because we're going to see that he holds that only wool and linen is what's called a beged. What is a garment? In the Torah, wool and linen, those are garments. Any other material that's made is not considered a garment. I know people wear it, but it's not going to be in the category of a beged, and therefore doesn't require tzitzis.
So a regular beged would be shatnez, basically. You can't mix wool and linen together.
Not a regular beged, a beged that combines both of them together. Yes, so yes. So if you have just wool, you're fine. If you have just linen, you're fine. It's only a problem if you have wool and linen.
Cotton, whatever cotton, like that's all.
Cotton would not,
woven.
so that would be subject to this machlokas,
Really?
right? Where Rav Nachman disagrees, and he says it would seem that no, cotton would not. We'll discuss that in a moment.
Huh?
Makes a big difference because you go to the store
Yeah.
and you get nitzit,
Yes.
right? You get the t-shirt tzitzis that are made out of cotton, and according to Rav Nachman, those do not require tzitzis.
Just know you're jumping ahead.
So, hang on, because this becomes different.
Wow.
Eisvei Rava Rav Nachman. Rava asks Rav Nachman, Hashiroyin vehakalach vehasrikin. These are different types of silks. Kulan chayavim betzitzis. So according to Rava, he says to Rav Nachman, look, all of these are required tzitzis. So he answers, midrabanan. Yeah, midoraisa they don't need. Only midrabanan. They only need midrabanan. Ihachi, if that's true, ema seifa. So then how do you explain the next part of the brisa? V'chulan, all of these types of silk, tzemer upishtim potrin bahen, you could put wool or linen strings on them. So iyamar bishlam deoraisa, if you're going to tell me that silk is deoraisa, hainu demishtaru behu kilayim, that's why you're allowed to put wool and linen tzitzis on, meaning the way that they're presuming to read this is, the tzitzis are made out of strings that are some wool and some linen. So therefore, why are you allowed to put wool and linen tzitzis onto the silk? Isn't that shotness? The answer is no, because it's a mitzvah. Now, if it's a mitzvah d'oraisa, fine, but if it's only mitzvah d'rabbanan, then why are you allowed to do that? You can't violate it. The silk doesn't need it. So therefore, you're really violating a lo saseh without doing a mitzvah saseh.
But would it be that shiloh if someone's wearing tzitzit with wool and linen, then they put a suit jacket on, made out of
Putting a suit jacket on, we said, doesn't matter, right? Putting one on top of the other doesn't make it shotness, only if you are going to fasten the two together, right? At least you need a knot to tie the two together. Ella, iyamar d'rabbanan, if you say it's rabbanan, hekem yishteri behu kilayim, how can you use wool and linen tzitzis? So the answer is, ema o tzemer o pishtim. No, we mean that you could use either 8 strings of linen or 8 strings of wool. Not that you can use a pair of tzitzis that has 4 strings or 2 and 2, right? Hachinami mistabra. That, by the way, makes logical sense to Katani Seifa because the end of the brisa says, Hein beminon, the rule for fabrics is that silk can be yotze with silk. Okay, so if you've got these silk talisim that they use in the conservative shuls or whatever, I don't know if they still do that. But it used to be
Scarves.
they had the little scarves, like the priests wear, right? They wrap them around their. That's where they get it from.
Some Sfardim wear that as well. Some Sfardim wear that as well.
No Sfardim wear that.
Scarves.
No, the conservative Jews would have these scarves.
Scarves,
Right?
tzitzis.
So they would put, and they were made out of silk. They were made out of silk,
right.
and they did have silk tzitzis on them very often, right? Now, if they made out of the silk tzitzis on it, so beminon potrin, then that's okay. The silk tzitzis are going to help the silk, but shalo beminon ain't potrin. But if you use tzitzis that are wool or linen, bless you, iyamar bishla, so then it's not going to help. So iyamar bishlam d'rabbanan. I understand if silk is d'rabbanan, haidu de mifteri baminon. That's why we would say that you can use the tzitzis of the same type. Elam iyamar deoraisa. But in other words, what you can't put silk onto a wool or a linen garment. So why are silk tzitzis okay? The answer is because in the first place, it's only d'rabbanan to put tzitzis on the silk garment in any event. So therefore, we are okay with you putting silk onto the silk, right? But iyamar deoraisa, but if it was a Torah obligation, semro pishtim hu depater. So then why wouldn't you be able to put silk tzitzis, right? Right? If the silk garment required tzitzis midoraisa, why would you let people allowed to put silk tzitzis on it? You need to put wool or linen tzitzis on it. Okay, so now it is important to note that quoted lehalacha. I'll see if I find it fast. Maybe I won't because we're getting towards the end of time, right? That halachically speaking, that is the halacha, right? That it is a suffix about putting tzitzis on other materials other than wool and linen. So, if I'll find it fast. The corners, that's strings. I'm not going to find it fast. But I'll see if I get to it at the end. But the bottom line is that it is certainly better to wear wool tzitzis then, because you're definitely chayiv the mitzvah dora. Now, if you get yourself cotton tzitzis, right? Did you make a bracha? The answer is yeah. We make a bracha on mitzvah d'rabbanan all the time, right? Mitzvah, your chayiv d'rabbanan. You can make a bracha on that mitzvah.
Why do some people have the minhag to sleep with the tzitzis?
We will get to nighttime tzitzis. It's coming up, right? We'll get to the issue of nighttime tzitzis.
We also get to the issue of talis gadol versus talis katan.
No, because I don't believe they had ones. It seems like they wore as their main garment kind of like a sari, like a big talis, right? That was their main clothing. So therefore, we wear a talis katan because our main garment doesn't have tzitzis. We don't want to be without the mitzvah.
When you get married, you wear both.
We make the bracha on the talis gadol to cover the talis gadol.
Correct.
Right?
Yes, because that's where right.
So this issue of cotton tzitzis,
But a somebody who's not married, right, who's not going to wear a talis gadol does make the bracha on a talis
If
gadol.
you're Sephardic.
so it would be better to have.
Yehuda, Sephardim are not that different than you.
It would be better to have wool tzitzis.
We're telling some.
Sorry.
It would be better to have wool
Before getting
tzitzis.
there.
You make a
Yes.
bracha on it.
Yes.
Now, if
So-
you're not going to make a bracha on
Yeah.
it. Does it like?
So if you're not going to make, but you want to get your doraisa mitzvah, don't you?
Because
Which you do by putting on your talis gadol.
Yes, but then you take it off.
Right.
So then the whole rest of your day you're walking around with mitzvah d'Rabbanan instead of the opportunity of mitzvah d'Oraisa.
that's why. Because it's sort of like when they reach.
That's what you meant, right? Sephardim, you put in. By the way, many Sephardim wear talis way earlier than that too, right? Because it's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to be mechanech children. So you go to many Sephardi communities and you will see children 5 years old, right? 4 years old, 5-year-old wearing talis.
That's what I meant. Well, that's what I meant when I said that.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So we're copying you.
Gotta go tzitzis shopping now.
That's it. So that's in our house. I used to tell the kids that we get to bar mitzvah and we're going to get you wool tzitzis for after your bar mitzvah because we'll let you run around in sports with the cotton ones, but chiyuv midoraisa from according to all opinions, you may as well get the wool ones and get the full credits.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now imi shomaha. Right.
I
So
used to have a sweater
yeah.
with zippers.
Oh.
Side.
Okay. That's a good question. Now
So that becomes.
it might be.
Becomes,
Yeah. Yeah, because we
Open
said,
it.
even if it's closed,
you don't open
because we said if we had learned yesterday that if you had corners and you tied them together, you still need to put tzitzis on it because it's meant to be untied and tied, right?
I
That
never realized.
might be.
Yes.
Very good, right? So, imi shumha lo irya. He says if that's your proof, so then that's not a proof because Kedarava, like Rava says, Rava Rami Ksiv. Rava contrasted the following psukim. It says hakanaf. It says that you're supposed to put tzitzis on the corner. Min kanaf. You're supposed to make it of the same material you're supposed to put your tzitzis on the same material as the garment is. Uksiv. Then it says. You're not supposed to wear shatnez tzemer ufishtim. This is why wool and linen, not any others, right? It's as the pasuk says, you're supposed to make it out of wool and linen. So haketzad, so that's contradiction. You said anything, and then you said wool and linen. So the answer is tzemer ufishtim potrin bein b'minon and bein below b'minon. When it comes to wool and linen, so it's going to satisfy the requirement, whether it is on a garment that's wool or linen, or if it's going to be on a garment of any other material like silk. Shar meaning any other type of material. So then that's b'minon potrin. That's what it means. It has to be of that same type. Shelo b'minon ein potrin. So therefore, that's even min haTorah midoraisa. So he says. So you don't have to prove that this brisa is telling you that these other types of materials are only d'Rabbanan. It could be that they are d'Oraisa. Okay. The Rav Nachman. So now that Rav Nachman, right? So what is that he says that. Rav Nachman's the one who holds that only wool and linen are obligated from the Torah. Where does he learn that from? Gedetana Rabbi Yishmael. It's a price from Rabbi Yishmael. Detana Rabbi Yishmael. Hol v'nemru begodim b'Torah stam. Since the Torah says many times garments, right? It doesn't tell you what a beged is. What's the definition? In one place, one place the Torah says, right? The concept of a beged is tzemer pishtim, is wool and linen in Vayikra. Right? It says bebeged tzemer or bebeged pishtim. So therefore, it tells you there that's talking about negoyim. That's talking about tsaras over there. But it tells you what the definition of a beged is. A beged is wool or linen. So af kol tzemer pishtim. Whenever the Torah uses the word beged, it means wool or linen. And so therefore, when the Torah talks about tzitzis, it means an obligation only on wool or linen.
Would the Mishkan or the Beit HaMikdash be a reference for that?
It doesn't use the word beged. If you see in the parsha this week, it's going to call it tchelas v'argaman v'tola shani v'she, right? All of those different types of dyed wool. It just calls it by the name of the dye. It doesn't use the word beged.
Had to get begeds on them.
We'll see that later on. Yes, it does call it begadim, and all the materials are wool and linen. So it conforms, right? It's true. Those are the materials, although they do put some gold in, but yeah. But basically it's wool and linen. Amar Abaye v'hatana de Rishmal. Now Abaye says, didn't we learn in the yeshiva of Yerishmael. Mapka me'idoch tana de Yerishmael. So, which comes from another brisa of Rabbi Yishmael. The Tana de Rabbi Yishmael, we learn in the brises of Rabbi Yishmael about Negoim, about blemishes. Beged, when the Torah says beged, so ainli ella beged tzemer. Must mean a wool garment, because the Torah says wool garment. Minayin l'rabos tzemer gemalim, how do I know to also include wool that comes from camels? V'tzemer arnovim, or rabbit hair, that comes as wool that comes from rabbits, they would call it wool. V'notze shalizim, and feathers from a goat. Goats don't have feathers, but I guess
nowadays
they have.
Nowadays, so you get black cats with rabbit fur. No.
Yes, you could, right? But I guess goat hair is very fine, and so they would call it like it's like feathers, right?
Yeah.
Vehakalach v'asrikin v'ashirayin, and the types of silk that they quote. So Talmud Lomar, therefore the pasuk says, "Oh, beged fishim," or linen garments. What's the or? Or means other types of garments that are not just wool or linen. So therefore, you see that it comes to include, to contrast the other Rabbi Yishmael, this brisa seems to imply that it could be any material. Okay, so the two brises are arguing with each other. So Tana Rabbanan, a rabbi's word, Sadin, a linen garment that has 4 corners. So, okay, betzitzis. So do you have to put, are you chayv and tzitzis on it? So Beishamai potrin, so he says, no, you don't have to put on, because he holds you're not going to be able to put tchelas on. You're not going to be able to put wool on it, because it's going to be a shatnez problem. And we know already that shatnez is not a problem, but according to Beis Shammai it is. Beis Hillel mechayv, and Beis Hillel says, yes, you do, because shatnez is not an issue.
In this situation, you would go by Beis Hillel, right?
We do go by Beis Hillel. Now, Amar Rabbi Eliezer ben Rabbi Tzadok, Rabbi Eliezer ben Rabbi Tzadok says, "Va'alo kol matil tchelas b'Yerushalayim eno ela min hamathian." So he says, but one. Sorry, I skipped a line. Halacha k'divrei Beis Hillel. The halacha, as Yehuda said, is like Beis Hillel, because we learned that this drasha, Beis Shammai doesn't hold this drasha that shatnez can get pushed off, right? So therefore, he doesn't hold of the concept of asay dochelos asay. So he says, since there's a prohibition against wearing shatnez, you can't violate shatnez in order to put tzitzis on. And Beis Hillel says, no, that's the purpose of the drasha. Asay dochelos asay. The mitzvah of tzitzis pushes off the mitzvah of shatnez. Okay. But Amar Rabbi Eliezer ben Rabbi Tzadok, Rabbi Eliezer ben Tzadok says, "Halal kol matil tchelas b'Yerushalayim." If anybody puts tchelas on his linen garments in Yerushalayim, eno ela min hamatmihin. So we are looking at, then he's the one of the ones who cause astonishment, meaning that people are going to take a look at him and go, why is that guy wearing shatnez? Right? So, I mean, if it's not a problem, why are we saying that it is a problem? So Amar Rebbe, so Rebbe says, Imkain lamasura. So why did they prohibit it in Yerushalayim? Lefisha ein bekiyin, because people are not experts. And therefore, people are going to see somebody with linen wearing wool tzitzis on it, and they're going to think, oh, I didn't know you can wear wool with linen. Great. And then everybody's going to go around wearing shatnez all the time. Uh-oh. They're not going to realize it's an asay dochelos asay, and it's only because it's tzitzis that it's permissible. So Amar le Rava bar Rav Chana le Rava. So Rava bar Rav Chana says, Rav China says to Rava, so lirmu be'asara v'nafku shekom mefarsei milsa. So he says, why don't you just make a public declaration? Get 10 guys together, put wool tzitzis on their linen garments, and let them walk around the marketplace, and everyone will see them, and they'll know that that's okay. So the answer is, Kol shekain demasmehu ilovon. Then everybody for sure will make a mistake. Everybody's going to see these guys walking around, and they'll say 10 guys are walking around wearing shatnez. Now shatnez is okay. So, okay, velidra shabapirka. So let the rabbi get up in shul and make a shear. He'll get up and he'll explain it to everybody. There's a los asay of shatnez. You're not allowed to wear wool and linen. But there's a mitzvah of tzitzis and asay doche los asay. We have the two parshas written together. And so therefore, this is permissible, by the way, even though it's not permitted under other times. Why don't you just...
Well, tzitzis is an exception.
So that's right. Just teach everybody, right? So the answer is, gezerah mishum kala ilon. The problem is that people are going to make a mistake because of what's called kala ilon. Kala ilon is a fake tchelas dye. the fake tchelas dye. So tchelas, right? The Torah tells us that you're supposed to make it from the fish,
Certain fish.
certain type of fish,
And they
right?
found that fish probably.
The Murex trunculus, right? We'll talk. Hopefully, maybe I think tell you. We'll go share. Maybe. Oh, I have a good documentary. I'll post the documentary on the WhatsApp.
Murex what?
It's it. The Murex trunculus. That's what it's called. Murex trunculus.
Found in the.
It's found by Haifa and in all that area. Yes, exactly.
Really?
Mhm.
Is this it?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Now there was the Reginer Chasidim who had their own tchelas. So if you go to the store and you go buy your tchelas, they will ask you what type, right? Do you want Murex trunculus tchelas or do you want Reginer Chasidim? Reginer Chasidim made it out of a squid, a cuttlefish. And there were issues with that dye in that it wasn't particularly blue, but the process that they used to make the dye turned it blue. And if you use that same process on many different fish, apparently they all turn blue. So they were worried about it. But the Rajner Hasidim hold by that tchelas, right? Because their Rebbe said that was the tchelas.
With process, I mean, they use some sort of chemical mixed in.
That's correct, yes. But the Murex trunculus is a different sort of a thing. And Rav Hershel Schachter is a very big proponent of tchelas, and his logic,
Against it, though.
right? So the logic is that it's a suffix d'oraisa, right? It might be, it might not be,
Yeah.
right? But if it isn't, so then as we're going to see, can your tzitzis be other colors other than white, right? Is that ruin the tzitzis if it's the wrong color? So it's a suffix d'orabana, suffix d'oraisa. We'll see that this Gemara seems to imply that wearing tzitzis that are the wrong colors, right? So then here's the concern, right? So this person is going to walk around and he's going to have, since tchelas is an expensive dye, they had a very similar blue colored dye that was made from plant product, and it was called the Kahal Yereim. The Kahal Yereim dye, it was detectable. Even back then, they had methods to be able to test and be able to know. It didn't last long, it didn't maintain the... Sorry?
What's the name of the plant in English?
I do not know what the plant's name is in English, right? So the Kahal Yereim plant. So it's very similar to tchelas, but it's not the Torah's tchelas. So what would happen is that people might make a mistake, and they might think, "Oh, that's tchelas." So then they're going to put their tchelas together with their linen, to put it on their linen garment, and now you're going to have shatnez together. Okay, so the problem is, what's the big deal? So even if it's the wrong one, v'lo yehei ela lavan, this is support of Rav Schachter's position, right? So okay, so what's the worst thing? So Kahal Yereim is not tchelas, so it's no worse than white, right? If you put some blue on your strings, it's not bad, right? It's just white, right? So the answer is kevan de efshar b'minon lo. So the answer is no, because the rule of aseh docha los aseh is that you're only pushing off the prohibition if there's no other way to do the mitzvah other than the prohibition. So tchelas, if you're making your tzitzis with tchelas, there's no other way. You have to put wool tzitzis onto your linen garment. Then shatnez is not an issue. You have no choice. But if I'm using...
Get a different garment that's not linen.
That is true. But that's a fair quote. It's a fair point, right? Nobody's forcing you to do it. I can still do the mitzvah of tzitzis, right? But I guess the answer is, this is subject to some dispute or discussion amongst the Rishonim as to whether the mitzvah falls on the person or the mitzvah falls on the beged. That's a fair question. According to the opinion, it says mitzvah falls on the person, so that person has no obligation to wear this beged, he can wear a different one. But if the mitzvah falls on a four-cornered garment, the Torah tells us, well, actually, that's the answer to both ways, right? The Torah tells us that linen is an acceptable garment. Since the Torah tells us linen is an acceptable garment, there must be a way to do it.
Okay,
so
there is like a mixed species of trees.
There you go. Okay. So therefore, therefore the wool tchelas must be if the wool tchelas would be acceptable, then I put it on my linen garment and I'm fine. But if I'm making only white tzitzis, I have a solution. Just put linen strings on. I don't have to put wool on. I only have to put wool when it's tchelas. If it's not tchelas, I put wool. I could put white linen on. Okay, so now if I use Kala Elon, right, people are going to make a look and they'll use the Kala Elon. So then say, well, what's the big deal? Then it's no worse than white. Yes, it is. Because white, you'd be using linen. But now that you dyed the Kala Elon onto wool, now you're putting wool onto your linen and you're getting no benefit out of it. Kid to Reish Lakish, like Reish Lakish says, Damar Reish Lakish, as Reish Lakish says, Kol Malkum Shata Motzi Aseh V'lo Seseh. If you've got a conflict between a positive commandment and a negative commandment, Imata Yochel L'Kayim Shnehem, if you can do both of them, right? Avoid the lo saseh and still do the aseh, mutav. That's the best. Avoid violate. You don't have to violate it. The imlav, but if not, you're in the Beis Hamikdash. You've got to do the korbanos, right? You've got to do a korban musaf on Shabbos. So then yavo aseh v'yidchal lo saseh. The positive commandment comes and pushes off the negative commandment. You've got no choice. Okay, so the Gemara wants to know. Live dekuha. So so what's your worry? People are going to go to the store. They're going to buy wool, thinking that that's dyed blue. They're going to think it's tchelas. They're going to tie it on, and now they'll be wearing shatnez. So they said we banned all blue. Okay, fine. Why don't you just do it? Tell everybody that if you go to the store and you buy tchelas, you've got to check it. To live dekuha, do a test, right? In order to be able to tell whether it's kala elon or whether it's tchelas. It was detectable. So Ella. So rather gzeira mishum te'ima. The answer is we are worried because what might happen is that you'll test it and it sounds like the way I had learned this was that they said, well, they'll test it, but the issue is that we're worried about that you will mess up the test. Meaning that you'll put the ones that you tested and found not to be tchelas aside, and then you'll pick those back up accidentally and you'll use them.
How did they test
right?
it? How did they test it back in the day?
I don't know how their test was. They had a chemical test, right? They would put
There's a note here where they're talking about that the problem is that the way that the test is done is that you would dye a sample of wool to test it. But the problem is that sample is not done l'shem mitzvah.
Oh, because so you'll use tchelas and you might actually use the kosher one. You might actually use the kosher, right? You might find it's kosher and you might use that, which will be a problem. Okay, I was looking at it the other way. That you might dye it, find out that it's kala elon, and then use that. You'll mix it up, but that's a good answer too, right? Okay, so therefore we're going to avoid mixing the wool up. So velich devei adiske. So fine. What's your worry? Your worry is that people are going to use the kala elon and whatever. Fine. So let's send out some letters, right? So just like tell everybody you can't use your tested wool. Just like send an email out. Hey, by the way, everybody, you can't. Just so that you know, when you buy tchelas, you've got to test it. And then when you test it and you find that it's tchelas, don't use the test piece because it was not done l'shem mitzvah tzitzis, and that's not going to be good. So just tell everybody. So the answer is idiski lekum velismuch. So he says we don't rely on announcements and letters. Why? Because we can't be sure that everybody is going to read it. Not everybody opens their email. So therefore, you can't require that. Amar Rava. So Rava says, Hashta chametz bepesach. Yoma Kippurim Kores Samchinan Adiski. He says, wait a second. You tell me we don't rely on letters? How did they ever know when Pesach was? How did they ever know when Yom Kippur was? Beis Din sent a message. They announced it everywhere. And so you're telling me, Chametz on Pesach, I know, based on an announcement for Beis Din. When Yom Kippur is based on an announcement for Beis Din. But here, the aseh ba'alma is just a regular aseh of wearing tzitzis. So lo kolshkin, why should we rely on a letter? So Ella Amar Rava. So Rava says ha milsa amri. So this is what we the thing that I'm about to say. I Rava, and also they said it in Eretz Yisrael. Mishum de Rabbi Zera Kavasi. Rabbi Zera said it just like me. He says Shema Yikara Sadino betoch shalosh v'yitferenu. Because what we're worried about is that you'll be walking around with your wool tzitzis on it, on your linen garment, and he will rip. It'll rip. So now he's got to fix it. So he's gonna need to sew up his linen garment. So what happens is he sews up his garment, and now he's got the existing, but for a while it was ripped, it wasn't liable in tzitzis because it was a ripped garment. Now he sews it up. The tzitzis that are on it are now not kosher because HaTorah Amra Tasav Lo Min Asli. You have to tie your tzitzis. You can't have your tzitzis on the garment and then, right, if you've got a garment that's not obligated in tzitzis and then you make it obligated, that's the tzitzis are no good, right? So that's like, for example, right, if I, have, I don't know how I would do it, right? If I've got tzitzis that are looped here and I cut the ends of it on here and open it up, those are not good. I have to tie the knot, l'shem mitzvah tzitzis, otherwise it's no good. So that's the problem. So they didn't want the linen because, and then if the tzitzis are no good, what's going to happen? Guy's walking around wearing his linen tzitzis with the wool tzitzis on the corner, thinking he's doing the right thing, not realizing it's shotness the whole time. Okay, and such a thing happened. Shar Rabbi Zera l'sadineh. Rabbi Zera actually had torn his garment, and that was in fact a problem. And we're going to see a few other reasons coming. We'll finish to this one line. Rabbi Zera Amar, Rabbi Zera says, Gzeira nami mishum ksus laila. He says, no, I'll tell you what the problem is. The problem is nighttime. There is no mitzvah to wear tzitzis at night. So, therefore, if you're wearing this garment with tzitzis, and then it becomes nighttime, now you're wearing wool and linen for no reason, you're getting no mitzvah, and you've got a mixture of wool and linen, it's a big problem, right? That's very possible. So therefore, because of that, they said, don't wear your wool and linen garments, right? Don't put that on. Now, as Yehuda says, but some people do wear tzitzis all night long, so that's a zohar, right? Well, halacha, it's still potentially an issue, right? But it is, you certainly wouldn't wear wool and linen, right? The Zohar is telling you should. It's a nice thing to do, but not that it is a mitzvah to do. So it wouldn't be a asid or chalos asay circumstance. Okay? We're going to bring a few other reasons when we continue and pick it up on Sunday.
Amar Rabba.
Amar Rabba.